Welcome to the Longest Turn Board Gaming Podcast. This is episode 7, Anachrony. My name is Tyler.
Hello, this is Kevin.
This is Tyson.
In this episode, we are going to discuss games that we've been playing lately, and then because it's been so long since we've done a feature review, we're going to shift anomalies and do one on Anachrony. Kevin will give us a rules summary, and then we'll discuss production quality, gameplay, things we like and dislike about the game, as well as give our final ratings. We'll close out the episode with some things that we are excited about. Before we get started, I have to say it's good to see both of you.
It's good to be back recording again.
Absolutely. The last time I played a game with either of you was President's Day.
It's been a few weeks since then.
Yeah. 2.5 weeks, right?
Yep.
The next day I found out I was feeling a little sick and my son was as well. And we both tested positive for COVID. So that kind of threw off our recording schedule. Thankfully, nobody that was at that game day I thought tested positive afterwards.
I thought for sure I had it because if there's any time that you would get COVID, when you're sitting around a table for 7 hours with the same person that has it, touching all the same game pieces, right?
And it was at the beginning of my sickness, so I'm
contagious.
Yes, highly contagious.
Yeah.
See, and I've been a collector of COVID variants at this point, having had
COVID bingo, yeah.
a couple of times. I was just hoping you didn't have a new variant that I hadn't already had because I didn't need blackout on my bingo card, that's for sure.
Yeah. Right. And I haven't. I've been lucky, knock on wood, haven't had any issues with COVID at all. So I don't know. Apparently I'm super immune.
But you're feeling okay now.
I'm feeling pretty good. I still got a little bit of a dry cough. But it was frustrating. I mean, like, if it would have, I felt like I had a bad cold for a couple days. I honestly, it would have just been a cold, I would have gone back to work a couple days later and just toughed it out. Like a week later, I tested positive again. I mean, it was like 8 or 9 days before I got a negative test, which was ridiculous. So that was a little bit frustrating, but it's good to see you guys. Good to be recording again. We threw in episode 0 in there that we had on the shelf. Got that.
We're going to release that one, but I'm kind of glad we dusted it off and got it out there.
Yeah. I think it turned out pretty good.
I'm appreciative to anybody who's stuck through the entire thing. I think there's some good stuff in there, but I mean, I think we've improved even in the short amount of time that we've done this since we started that one.
If you got through the whole episode, you're a true fan, Maddie, right?
Definitely. It definitely feels like a pilot episode. One more thing that we wanted to talk about before we get started. If you didn't notice, we unveiled our new logo. The one we used before was kind of a placeholder until we kind of figured out, hey, are we sticking with this? Is this for real? Are we doing this? How's it going? And I feel like we're all having a good time and the response has been great. I think things are taking off. And so we've got a new logo. It's a sloth to symbolize
the longest turn.
The longest turn.
That we're slow.
We're really slow.
In more than one way.
We take a long time playing games. So, yeah. I mean, I'm excited about it. I think it looks great.
I think it turned out great, yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully people like it.
If not, we're not changing again.
Yeah. All right. Well, anything else we need to cover?
No, let's
get into some of the things we've been playing.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into it. Kevin, you want to go first?
I do. So if you read our blog, and if you don't read our blog, I would encourage that you do. The last blog post I wrote was about a game called Aeon's End. So this one's been out since 2016. It is designed by Kevin Riley and is published by Indie Board and Cards. So I'd heard about Aeon's End for a while. It's never a game that's really been on my radar for whatever reason. A few weeks ago over President's Day weekend, before, we went and had the game day at Tyler's house, my brother-in-law was in town, and the sole purpose of him coming into town was so we could play games. There's a few other things that we did. We went to the comic book shop, and then obviously we made a stop at the local game shop as well. But for the most part, we were just playing games nonstop, which made for a pretty awesome weekend.
Sweet.
So one of the games that he brought was Aeon's End, and I was immediately drawn to it. Said, hey, we need to get this one played. So I read the rules and we got it all set up. So Aeon's End, it's in the similar vein of Dominion. It's a deck builder. You have a number of cards that are in front of you in stacks that you can buy from. It's a cooperative game, so it differs from Dominion in that way. But it's a deck builder. You start off with a certain number of cards. You're going to be buying cards. The goal of the game is you're trying to beat this big bad guy called the Nameless. And you're trying to do that before he kills everybody, or he destroys this place that you're living in called the Gravehold, I think is what it's called. I always forget the name. Okay. So you can die when the Gravehold goes down to 0. You can die if the Nameless kills everybody. The only way you win is if you kill the Nameless, or if the deck that the Nameless uses to attack you runs out. Okay. That's how you win. That's how you lose. So it's like a standard deck builder. The two things that really kind of drew me to it that set it apart from other games are the way you take your turns. So to start off the game, you get assigned a number. The number is then you have a card that you put in a turn order deck. So if there's 4 people playing, you have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then you have 2 cards that represent the bad guy, and they're nemesis cards. So you shuffle that deck together, and then you flip it over, and whatever you flip over, that's the person that takes their turn. So if I'm 1 and I flip over 1, I take my turn. If the nemesis card comes up, then the nemesis, the nameless guy, he takes his turn. You flip over a card from his deck and do whatever nastiness he does to you. I'd never really seen that in a game before. It makes it really interesting. It adds tension to the game. You don't know when the Nameless is going to come. He could go twice in a row, which will really do damage to you. If you're playing with 2 players, then you put 2 cards for each player in the deck. So there's a chance you can take 2 turns in a row, which is really cool. You can do a lot of damage that way. If there's 3 people playing, you put a question mark in the deck. And when that question mark comes up, then collectively as a group, you decide who goes, which adds some strategic, decisions to be made there. So that was cool. The other cool thing about it is in most deck builders, you take your discard pile, you shuffle it up, it becomes your new draw pile. In this game, you just take your discard pile, you flip it over, and it becomes your new draw pile, which completely blew my mind when I saw that. It's like not something I never had even thought of before, but it adds so much strategic, how am I going to discard these cards? Because that's how they're going to come up when I draw them, right? So you're trying to stack the discard deck so that when you flip it over and it becomes the draw deck, you get the cards that you want and you have this, super turn type of thing, which was really cool. So, those are the 2 things that kind of stood out for me. It's also one of those games where you feel like you're getting destroyed, but then at the end you make this awesome comeback at the end and you win, or, you lose, but it's still a lot of tension at the end. So anyway, as you can tell, I loved the game. We played it 3 times in a row. It was just awesome, and I'm excited to dig into it some more.
And then you immediately went out and purchased or got your own
yeah,
copy,
right. So my brother-in-law obviously took his. Amazon was nice enough to deliver it to me the next day. So
nice. So nice.
With the expansion. I got an expansion with it too. So.
Did they ship it in a bubble mailer? I love when they do that.
No. Actually, it came and it was shipped from Miniature Market.
Oh, wow.
I love ordering from Miniature Market because they really package their games well. So I was surprised to see that. I don't know how that really worked through Amazon, but hey, I'm all for it. No crushed box corners or anything in the shipment, which was great.
Nice. There's quite a bit of extra content available.
Yeah, there's a ton of different expansions. It's a good thing about getting into a game that's been out for a while because there's, if it's a good game, there's a lot of content for it. I got, I think the War Eternal expansion. There's a bunch of other ones, and there's also a legacy version, ooh, which I'm intrigued with, to say the least. I mean, I kind of stay away from legacy games just because of the time commitment. It has to be something that I'm really into, and this has potential, so I'm interested in it.
And sure. I know that you've expressed a lot of interest, obviously, and you've given this one a lot of praise, and I've heard you talk about it a number of times now, anytime either of you are like super interested in a game, it makes me want to take a look. I've heard good things about Aeon's End in the past, but the biggest thing, like the biggest deterrent for me, and you probably both know, is it's a full cooperative game, and I don't always love like a full cooperative game.
Tyson likes the backstabbing and the betrayal.
I like
the one winner type of thing.
I do. I like
King of
the
the
interaction.
Hill.
I like the
No matter what it takes.
the competition. No, that's good. I do like an occasional cooperative game. My biggest concern when it comes to a cooperative game, well, there's two, but is there like an alpha game element?
Quarterbacking, right?
Yeah. Can somebody who can quarterback your turn go in and tell me what I need to do?
So
At
you
a certain point, you just tell people to shut their pie hole. I mean,
or just don't play with those people, right?
right? I mean, like, hey, I got this. Thanks. You
and
know,
I don't
I'm
think
good.
we have that issue in our group necessarily, right? But
No.
yeah, if you're playing with those types of people, maybe you just don't play
But I mean,
that
like,
type of game with them, right?
even if I tell somebody to stop, you can see when you play a suboptimal play and they keep their mouth shut, and they're like, right? Like, I hate that because I'm like, okay, so what did I do wrong? Like I don't want to play suboptimally, but I also don't want
That
my
sounds
turns
like a
dictated.
people problem, not a game problem.
That's probably true. But I think one of the things that games can do to counter this in a cooperative game is it sounds like you have individual roles in Aeon's End, right? Like you're different like classes or something to that effect.
You do. So every character has a special ability that they can only do, and you have to power up that ability. I forget what it's called that you use to power it up, but you know, you're working with, you know what everybody's abilities are, and you're working together, and you say, okay, I can give you these things to help power up your ability, and then you can take that ability if you want, and then I can do it here. And there may be some issues with quarterbacking, but for the most part, you have your own deck, you have your own cards, you're taking your own turn, casting your own spells, that type of thing, and you know, you're kind of doing your own thing on your own turn. So there's going to be collaboration there.
Well, and I like the idea
you
of
know.
with Aeon's End, as you said, that the turn order, like basically kind of sounds like initiative order in like an RPG style game, right? Mm-hmm. I like that you can't necessarily plan for that. So that sounds really good to me for a cooperative game, is that there may not be an optimal play necessarily because you don't know when you're going to take your next turn. And that does sound exciting.
I mean, that's
true.
A little bit. I mean, it's not completely random, but Gloomhaven has kind of an initiative order
Right.
where you don't know if you're going first or if you're going last, or
And
based
that's
on
the
what
type of
card
stuff
you
that
play.
I really like.
Yeah.
And I like Gloomhaven a lot. And it's more of a dungeon crawly vibe. And I think that Aeon's End could probably have some of that type of stuff too. So I'd be interested in trying this one.
I'm definitely excited to try it out. I would also be interested in a legacy. You know, assuming I like the base game, I'd be all for playing in a legacy game.
And I read a little bit about the legacy version, and I think you get a character, and then you build up that character, and it is then a playable character for any
game
version
or
of
any
Aeon's
game.
End, right?
Nice. That's awesome.
Which is
That is
kind of
cool.
a cool thing,
That's
right?
super cool.
I do
Yeah.
notice, though, that Tyler's very emphatic about bringing up the legacy multiple times so that potentially Kevin will purchase it, because Tyler's kind of on this hiatus of purchasing as many games.
I have a long journey to get my shelf of shame back to single digits.
But all these
that's
loopholes,
so-
if I can get somebody else to buy the games, I can still
Well,
play
that
all the
doesn't count
games.
as me buying it.
I think we're all pretty good about suggesting games that other people can buy at this point, right? So,
very good.
you know.
In fact, Kevin and I both backed Carnegie, and we're
waffling on whether we're going to keep it or not.
and which one of us
keeps
is going to keep it.
I
And
think-
it's really fun. We've played it a ton on BGA.
Right.
The production looks amazing, but I don't know. We don't need two in our group. I think.
I'm pretty sure it's going to look good on your shelf. So I'm going to probably get rid
All
of
right,
that.
then I'm selling my On Mars, and you keep On Mars.
We're going to have to talk about this.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to switch gears here a little bit and go to a little bit lighter of a game. I'm going to a roll and write that came straight out of 1989. This is Can't Stop Express. It was designed by Sid Saxon, and it is an offshoot of Can't Stop, which is a push your luck dice game, which we've played a ton in this group, and my family plays. I know Kevin's family has it and plays a ton. This game we've been playing quite a bit on BGA. It's really fun because right off the bat, you go negative. And it's a struggle to get back to positive numbers, let alone win. So what you do, you roll 5 dice and you have to pick 2 pairs of numbers. And whichever 2 pairs you pick, let's say I picked 7 and 8, I'll put a checkbox next to 7 and a checkbox next to 8. I'm now negative 200 points for both of those numbers. So I'm at negative 400 until I get my 5th check mark in one of those numbers. That number, so 7, stays negative 200 points. So pretty soon, you're taking a bunch of turns, and then pretty soon you've got like 6 numbers that on your board that are checked off, and they're all negative 200. Well, eventually you start getting them to the point where you get your 5th check mark and they become worth 0 points. So you're back to 0 in that number. And then at any additional time you put a check mark for that number up to 10, you get a different value of victory points. And it's based on the probability of the dice roll. So a 7, I think each additional 7 after the 5th one is worth 30 points. And then the 2 and the 12, I think, are worth 100 points. Now, I said you roll 5 dice. You pick 2 pairs, so that leaves an extra dice. You have what's called, I think it's just called the 5th die rows. And there's 3 of them. The first number that you take with the 5th die will be added to one of those rows, and then with a check mark, and then the second and third until they're all filled in. All right. So you play until one of your 5th die rolls gets filled up. So you're rolling dice, you're trying to get back to positive numbers and then get, bonus points in a number. Sometimes your dice rolls just make it so you have to add another number. Like we've had games before where I was like, oh, I could win this. And then I get a 3 and I have to play a 3 and I don't have any of them. And I just got negative 200 points and it takes me out of the game.
Kicking the gut at that point.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I'm out.
Yeah. So I don't know. For me, like, I think, again, Sid Saxon, amazing designer. I think Tyson said when we talked about Acquire in the past, it just felt like he was ahead of his time. And this is to me, this is just as fun of a roll and write as any of the ones that have come out in the last few years when roll and writes have been on fire. I really enjoy this one. I don't know. What have you guys thought about Can't Stop Express?
Yeah, no, this is the first time we played this game, I didn't read the rules at all.
Me neither.
And I just started rolling dice and being like, okay, let's put that there, this there. And quickly I went to negative like 1,000 points or something like that. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get back from this.
I did the same thing. I'm like, oh, okay.
I think I won that first game with a score of 0.
Yeah. It was not like nobody had any impressive scores. I think since I've played a number since then, and I've gotten in the positives like 1 or 2 times.
Barely,
like it's
right?
hard to get into the positive, which at first made me feel like, oh no, I'm terrible at this game. But then I just had to shift my perspective of what is a good score. A good score, depending on the game, like the game we played where you won with 0, could be 0, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
But there can be somebody, like I think we played with my brother-in-law, Matt, and he had like 700 or 800 points, and the closest person was maybe barely positive.
Yep.
I don't remember.
And that was
so
his
that
first
game was ridiculous.
That was ridiculous. So there can be a runaway leader, but I think it's a fun game. I like it a lot.
I think that was his first game too, and so it just made me feel even more terrible about
I wonder if he knew what he was doing.
How do you think it compares to Can't Stop, the original game?
I love the simplicity of the original game.
Yep.
I've been playing it for years. I like that one a lot. I don't know which one I like better at this point. The Can't Stop Express is there's a little bit more going on there for sure. I think probably the original ekes it out for me, but I like Can't Stop Express. I'll play it anytime. I think it's a great game.
I haven't played enough of Can't Stop. I think I've played it 2 or 3 times, but you can see the heritage of Can't Stop in Can't Stop Express, which I think is cool because a lot of times, there are some times with roll and writes where the parent game is like completely different than what the roll and write is, and you don't retain the feel of the game. But I think that this feels like Can't Stop. If you like Can't Stop, you'll like Can't Stop Express.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like both of them, I think, because Can't Stop Express is new to me right now. It's a little more exciting. I think it's a little more intriguing and challenging than Can't Stop is. Trying to get back to zero, trying to have a positive score, what numbers am I going to take with this roll, and how is that going to affect my next rolls, and how many negative points am I willing to go in the hole? I mean, sometimes you just don't have the choice, but no. So that was something we've been playing a lot lately on Board Game Arena. I really enjoy it. I'm excited to continue play that one. I don't know that I'll buy the physical copy ever, since I already have Can't Stop, but definitely it's been a fun play lately.
Yeah, and roll and writes on BGA are usually pretty good.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's
one of the best way to play it.
They translate really well to the digital version.
There's no using a pencil.
Right. We know how you are with drawing
no
things.
hand cramping.
Hand cramping.
Yeah.
You are pushing way too hard on your pencil.
Yeah, right. I think you're doing it, Ron.
I think that's what my first grade teacher told me. But I haven't changed.
Still haven't learned. Man, this is for chumps. We got to do it digitally.
Yeah, right?
Welcome to 2022. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Can't Stop Express, you mentioned at the start, was a really light game, right? And this next game that I want to talk about, I went into this game thinking this is a light game. The game I'm talking about is Vivid Memories. It is not actually a light game whatsoever, but like Vivid Memories is published by Floodgate Games, designed by Matthew Dunstan and Brett Gilbert, and the art is done by Andrew Bosley. So looking at this game, just the presentation, it's got Andrew Bosley art on it. The theme is something about, basically, if you've seen the Disney movie Inside Out, it's kind of you're creating core memories and trying to develop lasting, lifelong core memories. It's a weird theme.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's something like that. Like I didn't really see the theme. But as I mentioned, it's Floodgate Games, which they publish Sagrada. So you can go in expecting that this is as abstract as Sagrada, because essentially this is just an abstract game in which you have these acrylic bits, which the presentation in this game is just
The
beautiful.
game's beautiful, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like these little acrylic bits that are different colors representing different styles of memories, I guess, or something to that effect.
I don't think we should try not to figure it out.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Well, here, I'll read what it's supposed to be. You'll take turns collecting fragments of childhood memories, weaving a tapestry of colored threads in your mind. Throughout your journey, you'll store important moments in your memory bank, gaining new abilities to help you score. That sounds great. I don't know that I felt any of those things playing this game, because essentially what you're doing is you're taking those acrylic bit pieces and you're forming patterns on your board. Your board looks like a brain, essentially, and it's like this pinkish brain color. And on the outsides of your board are these specific symbols and colors with a value. So the values could be like 1, 4, etc. I think 4 is the... 1, 4, or 18. So 18 is the highest, and you're trying to create links. Each of these areas, the 1, 4, or 18 spaces, have a number of acrylic shapes to them. The ones only have one piece that has to connect there. The 4s have 2 pieces, and the 18s have 3 pieces. So essentially, you're trying to build paths on your brain from one of these connection points to the other. And by doing so, when you complete them and you complete the entire pattern, you're going to gain a certain amount of points, either 1, 4, or 18 points. And as you can imagine, the 18 points is going to be a lot harder to score than the 1 is, because either the proximity between those spaces is closer, or it's just you only need one type of piece for it. So there's a lot of different actions in here, and it's honestly, when we first approached this game, it was kind of confusing and hard to wrap my brain around how it worked entirely. And then I started seeing these connections being made. And as I was doing that, I was realizing how terribly I was putting these formations down and how I should be actually playing it. But the game is so brain burning. Like trying to figure out what my optimal play was incredibly difficult, to the point that there were times that I was just like, I could spend another 5 minutes on here trying to figure out what the best play is and still not know what it is. So I'm just going to say, I think this one could potentially work because there's so many ways that you can move those pieces around and swap spaces and do different things. And this game is very abstract that I think even as I'm describing it, it's probably very difficult to understand exactly what's happening on the board, that you kind of just have to play it. And even when the rules were being explained to me, that was exactly how I felt, was that let's just get into this and then we play it. And it's relatively simple, like rules overhead, but the execution is extremely difficult. Kevin got to play this with me, and we played with Dan's new Kickstarter copy. I'm curious, Kevin, what were some of your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, it's very brain burning, like you said. So I had similar experiences to you. I mean, you have a certain number of turns that you can take on your turn, moving around the pieces on your board. I got to the point multiple times in the game where I'm like, I'm just done. I'm done with my turn. Let's just see how this all plays out, right?
Could be good. This could be
it's going to be good or going to be bad. I don't know, right? And I ended up doing pretty well in the game as a whole. I think I misunderstood a few key rules. I mean, it's the first time you play a game, especially a game that's like this, that's so thinky. I think next time I would play, I'd do better. And I think it's the type of game that the more you play, obviously the better you're going to get. You're going to see more things. But it is really, it really works your brain.
And I think you're exactly right, because the more you play it, the more easy you're going to see how these connections work and what you do. But my problem is so ultimately I like this game, but I don't know how many times I'd actually end up playing this game because of how brain burning it is. It has the appearance of a lighter game in the art style, the abstract theme, the basic actions of what you're doing, the turn structure. It doesn't seem all that complex.
But it's lying to you.
And on top of that, though, you also have the playtime set on the box says 30 to 45 minutes. I don't think that's inaccurate.
Per player or
no.
Well, if you're the longest turn board gaming podcast, then it's not going to be.
I think you could play this in 30 to 45 minutes, potentially.
If you're AP prone, not a chance. Right?
I think we only ended up playing, an hour 15 on this?
Yeah.
So
after the teach was
After
done.
the teach, we probably spent, and that was the first game. So if you played it, I could see you're getting down to 45 minutes maybe. But I just remember at the end of our play of this game, sitting there going, I think I had fun.
I know.
I'm not interested in immediately playing this game again. I need a rest from this game because it's so brain burny that I don't know how often this would come back to the table for me, because it's not one that I can easily introduce to new people. And it's not one that I probably would choose we're going to talk about Anachrony later. I'd rather play a game of Anachrony than play Vivid Memories, but the amount of brain crunch that I'm getting out of both is probably comparable to some degree.
But there are people that love that type of game, though. So there is a target audience for this game, right? The people who really like brain burny, thinky games, and the fact that it's a quicker one at that, I think is going to appeal to a lot of people. So if that's something that you're into, that's just a great game for that, right? But for me and my taste, I think I kind of align more with you, Tyson. Is it feels like a lot of work. And when I play games, it's it's more on I want to have fun, and this
wasn't fun, because there's a lot of fun things about it. It's just.
But it's just I don't know if I want to work that hard for it.
Exactly.
Right?
So this was another game night that I missed from sickness. I'm not so sad that I missed it anymore.
Well, I mean,
it sounds fun.
Question mark?
Question mark? I don't know.
We're not giving a glowing
what else
endorsement.
did you guys
of it
play
for
that
sure.
night?
I'd play it again.
You played 2 games that night.
We played that,
did.
and
What
then we
else did we
played
play?
Mountain Goats. And
Mountain Goats by board game tables. I think they came out with a few smaller games.
Did you get Monster Crunch in?
If only, right? That would have really.
Then
topped
I
off
would
the
have been
night.
upset. I missed
You
it.
would if you would. I know.
Furious.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so ultimately, I like this game. It's not one I'm rushing to get back to the table. I would definitely play this if somebody said, "Hey, let's play this again," and I would absolutely play it. But it's probably not one that I'm eager about. So that's Vivid Memories.
Sorry, one more question. Was that Dan's first play of it?
No, I think that was Dan's second play of it, and his reaction was similar to ours in that he liked it ultimately. But I think he initially backed this and wanted to play it with his family and brought it out for a family game night. And by the end of it, his family were just like, "I'm done. We're done." Like so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I feel kind of similar ways to it for sure. All right, so the next game that I was able to get played that I want to talk about is it's an expansion to one of my favorite games, and we've talked about this game before on the podcast. A little bit, controversial maybe. Our first discussion comparing it to another game, Dune Imperium, but this one is Lost Ruins of Arnak: Expedition Leaders. So I was super excited to get my hands on this one. Tyler was nice enough to give me a copy of this. We played it a few weeks ago, and it was awesome. It was great. I think it really adds to the game. It adds some different things, some different concepts that are really, really good and make it more of a complete game, I think. So in Expedition Leaders, you have a number of leaders that have various abilities. So each leader has a different ability that only they can do. And they also start with their own unique starting cards. That's kind of the gist of it, right? The gameplay is very similar to base Lost Ruins of Arnak. But to me anyway, it feels like you're more unique in what you can do. And you have more abilities to what you can do. My ability, for example, was I had another person that I could put out onto the board, which gave me a lot more options. I could also use one of the abilities of the assistants, the face-up assistants that were on the board. So that gives me more options of things that I can do, which I think are cool. Tyler had one where he could eat snacks, and the snacks would let him move his one worker that he had.
Yeah, one less explorer.
Yeah, he had one less explorer, but he could feed him snacks, and I guess they get energized, and they can go somewhere else on the board and do that action, right? Which is cool because not only does he get to move, he gets to free up an action that he was on before, and somebody else can go to that action. Tyson had something going on over there. I have no idea what that was, but his thing seemed pretty cool.
He was all about the fear cards. Yeah.
I used fear cards in a new way that hadn't been I wanted fear cards because I could spend fear cards to gain additional actions and do different things. And so I would collect fear cards, and then when I would I can't remember the term in Arnak, but expel or trash from the game essentially, it would put them into a section on my player board that I could then use them as a resource, which was cool because additionally what we found out about that was because I was collecting so many fear cards, it depleted the entire deck of fear cards. And we found out about a rule that we hadn't realized because we had never experienced, that if all the fear cards are gone from the game, if somebody should have to draw a new fear card, they instead take a -2 points fear token, which cannot be getting rid of. You can't get rid of that at all. And so it was kind of fun to see that I could kind of potentially force people to have negative points.
Yeah, it was cool.
Which we know Tyson loves to stab people in the back.
That's right. So he picked the perfect
leader,
did. Right?
It worked awesome. I didn't win, but it still was fun.
Yeah. What do you think about this one, Tyler?
I did feel like I was playing a complete game with the expansion. I had a blast figuring out my leader. I did not play up optimally a couple rounds. There were a couple actions I missed out on because I didn't plan very well. So, that was a little frustrating, but I enjoyed the experience and I want to go back to it. And I do not want to play a Lost Ruins of Arnak without the expansion. The one negative I have with it was because each player now has additional actions available to them. The game takes longer, especially in a 4-player game, which we played. The rounds were very drawn out. That night we had Lost Ruins of Arnak set up on one table and Dune Imperium set up on the other table, and Arnak took like 3.5 hours probably. We ended up playing a couple quick card games afterwards. There was no way we were getting Dune Imperium in that night. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I still think because you have Arnak and now the expansion, I'm probably going to get rid of it. But I enjoyed the play, and it did feel like a more complete game with the expansion.
Yeah, and I don't think if you're introducing the game to somebody new, I don't think adding in the expansion is too much. So I don't think I'll ever play without it either.
Yeah, I would probably give them one of the leaders that's easier to learn.
Yep, for sure.
But I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was a phenomenal addition to the game. Like, I already really liked Lost Ruins of Arnak, and I think it does a great job with the base game alone at what it does. That this only just enhanced it. It did add things to the game that I felt like could have been missing potentially in the base game, but didn't detract from my experience of the base game, such as the asymmetric powers. I always love having a difference in what I can do than what somebody else can do, particularly when it's a deck builder. Like, I like to say I have a goal or a destination that can kind of point me in the right way of this is how this specific leader ends up playing as. So I really enjoyed it, and I would agree that I would probably always elect to choose this. But since like I play a lot of Arnak on BGA and they don't have the expansion on there, I really hope they put it on there. And I've still played a lot of Arnak since we played the expansion, and I'm still really liking the base game. That I don't mind playing without it. I would prefer to play with it, but like it's still a great game.
Yeah,
I agree with. Yeah,
I disagree, but that's fine.
No, I love the base game. I'll play it on BGA anytime.
I loved the expansion. It was an awesome addition.
Yeah.
It was nice for the game to finally get some asymmetry in there.
Yeah, but I don't think a game has to have asymmetry in order to be a good game, right? It does add to it as long as it doesn't introduce balancing issues, because there are games that are asymmetric that, look at Tapestry for example.
That's a really good example of that.
Right. It's like, okay, I'm going to release this, and then a month later I'm going to, adjust all these powers because
and every subsequent expansion I'm also going to put out an adjustment.
Which I still love Tapestry.
I do too. I just played 4 games of it the other day. So.
I like it, but the shine is kind of worn off a little bit for me.
Yeah, I think we need to get arts and architecture out and play with that.
I've never played with that, so that could liven it up a bit. You really like that expansion, right?
I did. I enjoyed it.
I loved it.
Yeah, it was awesome.
No, I'm excited to play it for sure.
Cool. Well, sticking with the theme of expansions, I'm going to talk about Dune Imperium Rise of Ix. It's a deck builder, action selection, trying to get to a certain number of victory points. Once the end game is triggered, whoever ends up with the most victory points wins. Well, this new expansion, the first expansion, Rise of Ix, just came out in the last few months. And I've had the opportunity to play it a couple of times. And after the first game, I felt like I didn't necessarily get my money's worth. It's a little bit pricier than the Arnak expansion. But I played again with my son Logan the other night and had an absolute blast with it. And some of the things that it adds a new planet location, Ix, that you can go to, which allows you to buy technology tiles with your spice. And these technology tiles both give you ongoing benefits throughout the game, as well as they can score you victory points at the end of the game. They can also, they give you some initial bonuses when you buy them. There was a bunch of new cards added to the main deck. There's new intrigue cards, a new conflict card or two. And then it also adds dreadnoughts. When they go into battle, they're worth 3 battle points, whereas your other units that go in are only worth 2. And then swords that you add from your cards are worth 1 each. But something that's really cool, unlike the rest of your units, when a dreadnought is in a battle, it doesn't die, whether you win or lose the battle. If you lose the battle, it goes back to your garrison. If you win the battle, you get to put it on one of the locations on the board where if you control it and somebody takes that action, you get a bonus reward, even if it's not your turn or not your action. So the dreadnoughts are really cool. You only get up to 2 of them, but they're really powerful. One other thing that it added in, there was a smaller board that covers up the top right board of the base game, and where some of the previous actions, you're just trading spice for money and vice versa. Well, in this one, this little new board adds shipping, a shipping track. And so you can go up on the shipping track and there's only 3 steps on it, but each step has a reward, and you collect those rewards when you, instead of going up on the track, you pull your guy back. You can take all of the rewards that you have gotten to. So if you're on step 3, you get all 3 rewards. I believe you can take them in any order. Some really cool stuff there. You can buy a technology from Ix with one of them. You get, add troops to your garrison, go up on a track, get money or spice. I really enjoyed this expansion the first time, like I said. It also added a bunch of new factions that you can choose from and some really complex ones as well. So part of the reason sorry, go ahead.
What changed then from your first play to your second play? Like, why did it? Because you were a little lukewarm on it, like you said.
Well, okay, so this gets into what I was about to say, and maybe this is what it was, but the first game, okay, I don't know what it is about this game. I think I've won once or twice, maybe, out of 7 or 8 or 9 plays. I'm 0 for 4 against my 13-year-old son. And I don't know what it is. Like, he has picked up on the strategy, some of the synergies, which I'm still figuring out. There are rounds in this game where I'm like, I have no idea what to do right now. Well, I guess I'll try this. And I know that those are inefficient plays, and I'm usually pretty good about picking up stuff like that in different games. And for whatever reason, I'm still struggling with Dune Imperium. And that's part of the reason I love it is I've played 8 or 9 times, and I'm still trying to figure out optimal plays and actions. There's so much there to explore. Is part of the reason I love it. So I was 0 for 3 against Logan. The second game we play, we're in the second to last round. I'm 2 points ahead of him. I just won a conflict, so I got a victory point for winning the conflict, and I came up 1 spice short of adding another victory point from winning the conflict, right? So I could have got 2, I only got 1. I'm up 2 points going into the last round. So I went up on the Emperor track, and I secured the last point that was available to me on the 4 tracks. So I'm up 3 points now. And I have a technology card that's going to give me a point. So I'm potentially up 4 points, right? We go into the battle. Logan wins that handily because I couldn't get enough guys deployed. So he gets 2 points from that. And I'm like, sweet, I got this. I'm still, so at this point, I'm up 1 point. Then I score the point from my technology card. I'm up 2 points. He busts out the technology card that I forgot he had bought, and it was sitting right there the whole time. And he got 1 point for each track that he was 1 step or lower on. 1 track, he maxed it out. The other 3 tracks, he was on 0 or 1. He scored 3 points. He beat me 12 to 11. And I was just, like, come on, like, you little punk, like this 13-year-old kid who's wiping the floor with me, like, in this game. And I don't know what it is. I'm 0 for 4 against him. I do have to say, I love in the 2-player game, and I think the solo you play with this as well, but there's this House Hagel kind of non-player, 3rd player. It's really easy to manage. It competes in the tracks and in the battles and locking up some of the action spaces so you can't take them. It's really easy to manage, and it just adds a ton to a 2-player game of this. And, I don't know. Dune Imperium and Lost Ruins of Arnak, they're both deck builders. I love both of them, especially with the expansions now that Arnak's a complete game. And I'm excited to go back to both of them. So I don't know if this is the year of deck builders for us. We're going to be trying out Aeon's End soon. Tyrants of the Underdark needs to get back to the table. I can't say enough good things about Rise of X. I think it's really well balanced. I don't think it needs anything else.
That sounds good. I don't have a lot of plays of Dune Imperium, but it's a game that I enjoyed, and I'd love to play it again. This expansion sounds great. So when you bring it out for game night, I will play for sure.
Unless we're playing Arnak for 4 hours beforehand.
Unless we're playing Arnak for 4 hours. I don't know if it was 4 hours, but yeah, it was a long game. Yeah. It was a long game.
I haven't played it. I've played one time still, and I haven't played it since. So I can't speak intelligently on this, which I think means definitively Arnak is the better game until I can
We're all
say
entitled
otherwise.
To our own opinions,
Clearly.
even when we're wrong.
I remember having played both of them just there. Like I was more inclined to like Dune Imperium more, but since I haven't had the opportunity to play it since, I don't know.
And I think they're both great games.
Yeah, that's how
like
I
you
feel.
said, Tyler. I don't think you can go wrong with either of them. So I mean, if you like deck builders, if you like worker placement, I mean it's got they're very similar games in their mechanics. They
came out near the same time.
They came out in the same time. If you gravitate towards the theme of Dune Imperium, I think that's going to help your enjoyment as well, right? Because I think it really does a good job of bringing that theme in, and I mean it's got a lot of the same pictures as the movie does.
Yeah, and once you see the movie, then the characters come up, and it's like, oh, I know that guy.
Yeah,
it's cool.
So maybe if you have a budget for one of those games, whatever theme really grabs you, maybe go towards that one. You really can't go wrong with either, though.
Absolutely.
I've been playing a 2-player game recently, and I've played 13 games of this one. And I'm still not sure where I stand on this game after 13 games.
After 13, you don't know where you stand.
After 13 games, I don't know. But it's a quick game. It's a 2-player game. It's called Jekyll versus Hyde, published by Mandu Games. It's designed by Jekyll, and the art is by Vincent Dutrait. And this is a game that, again, production is really nice for this little small box card game. It's beautiful with a lot of different stuff. The art is great, but the theme of the game is essentially you and your opponent are the same-ish person. One of you is Jekyll, one of you is Hyde, and you're trying to gain control of whose personality comes to surface. So in it, it's a trick-taking game, and you have 3 different suits. And I think they're called like greed, pride, and envy. And it's like red, purple, and green cards. And then you also have a neutral suit that is like potions. It's like basically the serum that Dr. Jekyll made to drink and turn into Hyde or whatever is the theme behind it. But essentially in this deck building game, this trick-taking game rather, it works like most other trick-taking games that you've got a trump suit. The trump suit is going to determine the best played card, and you're trying to potentially win or lose hands. So that's kind of the twist on this game, is that you're not necessarily trying to win any hand, because each player, either Jekyll or Hyde, will have a specific goal. So Dr. Jekyll is essentially trying to maintain balance. So he wants to maintain order, meaning that he wants Jekyll and Hyde to win an equal amount of suits. So
Of tricks,
yes, sorry. He's trying to make it so that there's a balance there, so that Jekyll doesn't have more control or Hyde doesn't have more control, but there's a balance. Whereas Mr. Hyde is sitting there, he just wants chaos. So he doesn't care if he loses all the suits or wins all the suits, as long as he has like a giant disparity between the two. So there's a little main board there that shows the balance between Jekyll and Hyde, and it's kind of this tug of war where I think there's 10 spaces on it, and if the marker gets all the way to the Hyde side, the game ends. But if after 3 rounds, Dr. Jekyll has maintained order enough that Hyde hasn't gained complete control, then after those 3 rounds, Dr. Jekyll wins. So it's this asymmetric trick-taking game. And there's a lot of really interesting things going on in here because you're trying to make those decisions of, do I win this hand or do I lose this hand for this specific time? And if I don't, then what's going to happen the next time? The other thing that's interesting is that the 3 suits have a potion that is associated to it so that you can switch things up. So, for example, the red suit is, if I play a potion and treat it as a red potion, then it makes it so that it switches up.
The trump order resets.
The trump order. So the trump order is determined basically by the first card that is played. That suit now becomes the trump order. And then if a different suit is played at a later time, that becomes the second trump suit or the second highest trump suit. And then the last one that's played is the highest trump suit. So each round of the game, you're trying to set that trump suit. So it has this weird push and pull, tug of war kind of mechanic that just makes this game really interesting. And each of these suits have different powers that you can do stuff. So there's a lot of decisions to be made. My concern with this game, and the reason why I'm not sure how I feel about this game, is that I don't think Jekyll and Hyde are balanced in how they play out. Because I've played, like I said, 13 games, and I think I've won as Dr. Jekyll like 1 or 2 times, and those have been during like teaching games. So when I've been I always will try and be Dr. Jekyll if I'm teaching and they haven't played, because I think he's harder to manage. But I think Dr. Jekyll has a harder time of it. So it's not like this well-balanced game of like, if you and I, Kevin, are basically equal in experience, I think Mr. Hyde has the tendency to win more often than Dr. Jekyll.
So Jekyll's the one that wants even, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So it's tough for me because I played this not as much as you have, but I've played it. It's tough to get in the mindset of, okay, I've got to win this one, and I've got to lose this one. You know, it's tough to. You got to go both ways, right? Because you want to win as much as you lose. It's got to be equal. Well, right?
Kevin, you and we played. I think the first game I played was with you, Kevin, and at one point we didn't fully grasp that.
I remember you guys saying this.
The goals, and I was Mr. Hyde and you were Dr. Jekyll.
Yeah.
And you had just been sweeping me, winning every single trick.
I thought I was killing it.
And I was like, well, I cannot play this game, apparently.
We were IMing each other, right? Yeah.
And then when the game ends, we look and the rules end up saying, hey, guess what? Tyson, you won because you were Hyde, and you
clearly outplayed me.
You just swept it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I really like this game. I think it's fun. It's quick. I played a game yesterday, actually, and I thought I was Dr. Jekyll, and I thought I was going to lose in the first round. And like just how things played out, I didn't. I think Hyde moved 4 or 5 spots in the first round, and then a few more in the second round. And then he came up 1 short in the third round, and I won. And I was completely like, it was so lucky because there were so many points in the game where I thought for sure I was done. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was owning me. You know, luckily I played the potion cards. Is that what they're called? Potion. Yeah. I played the potion cards a couple of times that totally saved the round for me. I think it's fascinating that you go into each round with a mindset, regardless of who you are, Dr. Jekyll or Hyde, right? You go into the mindset of the round based on what cards you have, like, okay, I totally need to win. I'm going to win a bunch, you know? And then you start winning too many, or, you know, you pull back and you're shifting what you're trying to do within a round. And I think that's really cool.
I would agree. And that's why ultimately, like I said, I don't know how I feel about it, because every play I've played of the game, I really enjoy the experience regardless of the outcome. But like, to me, I feel like I want to say there's got to be something wrong with it if I feel like there's a complete imbalance. But at the same time, is there? Because I enjoy it. So like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, if you're Dr. Jekyll and you're an experienced player and you're playing with someone else who's played, like it feels better when you win, right? You're taking on a bigger challenge,
right?
Potentially.
But you can see those moves.
I don't think it's as one-sided. I don't think it's super one-sided. I think you still have a pretty good chance of winning as Dr. Jekyll.
But if you're both experienced players, what I've noticed is that there are some standard moves to take. Like if you're put in specific situations, there is an optimal play. And depending on how many cards I have left and how many cards you have left, you know what the optimal plays are as much as I know what the optimal plays are, which becomes the question of I clearly cannot drink the wine that is in front of me because, right? And you don't know, like I'm at that kind of impasse of what do I do? Because if I do this, I lose. But if I don't do that and you think I am like,
I thought for sure I was going to lose this last game I played in the third round, if not in the first round. But I thought for sure based on the 2 cards I had left, and one of them was a potion, and I don't remember how, but it let me get out of it and balance things just enough that I hung on for the win. But I also like about this game, you pass cards each round.
I do like that.
Right.
And like especially in the third round, you pass 3 cards and you get like a 7/7 and a 6. And it's like, okay, well, he's trying to lose as much as possible.
Yeah.
If he's Hyde, right? And it's like, okay, well, now I have all these power cards and I had passed him my weak cards. How am I going to salvage
But then you
this?
can like try and manipulate the trump. You know what that is, and there's ways
or
to
my
do that.
favorite way, and I think Tyler did this to me at one point, was with that, like you had to trade me certain cards at a certain point in the game, but you also had a potion that you used as a green potion, which allows you to then swap the cards again. So you can swap the cards right back and forth, and you're like, oh, I thought I was going to win here.
That's right. We did that like twice in a row one time, and we just kept on passing cards back and forth to each other. Yeah, that is cool. It's a good game. I enjoy this one.
Yeah, and nobody owns a physical copy, right?
No.
I can't imagine it's a very expensive game. I'm not sure I'm going to get it, but I love playing it on BGA.
Yeah, fantastic implementation on BGA.
All right, well, I think that sums up what we've been playing lately. We're going to move on to our feature review portion. Again, we are going to be covering Anachrony, and we are going to start out first with a rules summary from Kevin.
Anachrony is designed by David Turczi and produced by Mindclash Games. Anachrony is a big game. There's no way that I can go through all of the rules, so I'll try and give a brief summary of the theme and how the game plays. In Anachrony, you are in a post-apocalyptic world. The world is recovering from an event called the Day of Purgation, where a mysterious, catastrophic explosion shook the entire planet. The surface of the Earth became uninhabitable, and only 4 different societies or paths remained. These paths lived in complete isolation and would occasionally meet in the capital, the last independent city on Earth, led by the World Council. Explorers discovered an unknown substance at the impact site that caused the Day of Purgation. This substance, neutronium, was found to be useful in building. A monument was made out of neutronium in honor of the 4 paths and the capital city. In a celebration after the monument was created, a time rift from the future opened, revealing the true power of the neutronium. Neutronium was capable of opening wormholes through time. Quickly, the people realized that the purgation was caused by an asteroid impacting the Earth in the future, transferring its energy to the past, causing the devastation of the purgation. This impact is now looming on the horizon, threatening to devastate not only the past, but also the future. In Anachrony, you are the leader of one of New Earth's ideological paths: harmony, dominance, progress, and salvation. Your ultimate goal is to prepare for the upcoming asteroid impact, secure the future of your people, and overcome the other 3 paths as the dominant ideology in shaping humanity's fate. The game is played through up to 7 rounds, called eras, each symbolizing several years. After the 4th era, the asteroid impact occurs, changing how the remaining eras play out, and triggering the countdown to game end. Anachrony is centered around 3 game concepts: powering up exosuits, taking actions with workers, and using time travel. At the beginning of each era, each player may choose to power up to 6 exosuits. This potentially costs energy cores. The number of exosuits determines how many actions you can take on the main board. The exosuits protect your workers as they venture out of the safety of your path's capital. The action rounds phase is the heart of each era, where players alternate taking actions using their workers. A worker may be used individually on your player board or in an exosuit on the main board. Usually workers used to take an action during the action rounds phase become tired at the end of the era. Thanks to the time rifts, humanity can now use time travel to boost its progress. At the beginning of each era, in the warp phase, they may request resources and manpower from their future. This is symbolized by the warp tiles placed on the timeline. Later, however, these assets have to be sent back to the present to close the loop. This is done with power plant buildings that power up your time rift and open its focus to a past era. The later the assets are returned to the past, the more likely they are to cause temporal paradoxes and ultimately anomalies. The game ends with a victory point scoring after the collapse of the world capital due to the asteroid impact. There are a number of ways to score victory points, with the most important ones being constructing buildings and super projects, making scientific breakthroughs, and using time travel, achieving high morale, and evacuating the collapsing world capital. I obviously didn't go in depth into everything this game has to offer. As I mentioned before, there is way too much to cover everything. This will hopefully give you a taste, though, of the theme and some main concepts of how Anachrony works. Let's get back to the table to find out what we thought of Anachrony.
All right, thanks, Kevin, for giving us a quick rules overview of Anachrony and what it is. To get started, let's talk a little bit about this game. Let's talk about the production of this game. I think that this game is there's a lot that we could talk about production-wise, but to kick us off, Kevin, what are your thoughts on the production of this game?
So I'd like to have a little caveat first before we start talking about production.
You're all in.
I'm all in. So the Kickstarter, they ran a Kickstarter a few years back. It's probably been 3 years ago. I don't know. It took forever for it to get fulfilled, but I got the Infinity box. So it's got all the expansions. It's got upgraded bits and everything. So I guess keep that in mind as we're talking through the production. Is
Well, and I'll give a perspective because I bought the copy in like 2017 that was not this version. So
we'll compare.
I'll compare.
We'll compare there. But with that said, the production is amazing. The first thing you'll notice about the production is I think the exosuits. If you either get those after there's an exosuit pack or you get them in the Infinity box, holy cow, they're amazing. They're completely unnecessary, right? You don't need them, but they're actually slightly functional, right?
They're awesome.
Because you have your workers and you slot your workers inside the exosuit and then they go out to the capital city board and it's symbolizing they're protected from the harsh world after the post purgation. I just basically
That's
just
such
said
a
that
weird word.
The purgation.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that comes to mind on production. The art is amazing. I love the art. I think it looks awesome. The boards themselves are high quality. If you get the Infinity box, you can get upgraded tokens and stuff and upgraded resources. The neutronium, the titanium, and the gold are all metal pieces, which they're heavy. They feel great in your hand. Which is great. If you don't get that, then they're cardboard tokens, but the cardboard tokens are still good quality, right?
And they're thick enough pieces that it's really good.
Yeah. So really, I have no issues at all with the production. I think it's fantastic.
So I also got the Infinity box, and I have to say it took me 5 or 6 hours to put that thing together.
Oh, to sort everything? Yeah.
Sleeve and punch and, put everything, try and figure out where stuff was going. And they have a good guide. They show you how to put it together.
Yeah.
Once it's together, the box and all the trays and everything, that in and of itself is a work of art.
Yes,
it really is.
amazing.
There's so much thought that they put into that, which is crazy. And it's very functional, right?
And I think that's kind of the thing that we've come to expect from Mindclash, just about in everything that they do. It just thought out every last bit. And, you know, like I said, it took me hours to put that thing together. But once I did, when I get that out, I'm like, this is amazing.
Well, and the fact that you can take the trays out and use the trays as you're playing,
Yep.
all the resources stay in those trays. All the buildings that you're using stay in the trays. And even the way they designed it, where you're shifting the building stacks at the beginning of every round, you just take the building and you put it in its designated spot in the tray, and it's just all set up for you, ready to go. So I think that's just really smart of them to do for a game this big that has so many components and normally would take forever to set up. Well, it really cuts down the setup time.
That's such a big deal because there is a lot of setup time in this game, and if you don't have the extra Infinity Box stuff, it can be kind of tedious. So it is an undertaking, especially if you don't have the Infinity Box production quality. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I bought this game in about 2017. Actually, my wife bought this game for me, which
Wow.
I was impressed with her choice, and she gave it to me for like my birthday or something, and it was great. She gave it to me, and I loved it, but she gave it to me at the very like minimal version. So I have, and there's a couple different versions of this out there now. There's like the Essential Edition, and then there's like the Original Edition. I don't think it's the Essential Edition. I got the edition that has the Doomsday module expansion that comes in by default in it and a couple of other things. So I didn't get the ones where you had to buy separate things to get stuff. But it's great. You mentioned, Kevin, that the minis is the first thing that you notice in this game. Well, I didn't own the minis until last year, actually. I just bought these in 2021, and I've owned the game since 2017. So I hadn't played with the minis until we started playing this game, and that was probably 2020 is when we first played this game together. So I hadn't played this game with the minis until we played it together. And like you said, Kevin, the minis are functional, they're unnecessary, but they do enhance the experience. So, but even without it, I was really enjoying the game. I thought it was great, and it's a good production no matter what you're getting out of it. But now I'm purchasing all of the extra stuff and upgrading it bit by bit because it's awesome. It's awesome.
So if you don't have the exosuits, are you just placing the workers out on the board? Is that how it works?
If you don't have the exosuit, what they have is they have cardboard exosuits and a hexagonal exosuit that you put on the board that matches the shape of like the worker spaces on the capital board. But then you put a worker on top of it.
Okay.
So you're putting out 2 tokens instead of putting
completely functional but less awesome.
Correct.
Yep. Cool.
So it works out. It's good. Ultimately, I think Mindclash Games production is one of the highest production qualities out there of any publisher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they do a great job.
Yeah. So any version of this is well worth it. Now let's get into what people.
Sorry, I got one. Like the production's amazing on this, right? I have one tiny, like the first player marker banner.
Oh, this is fair.
Okay.
This is
kind of
a fair
lame.
point.
Yep, fair.
So
I missed this, but yes.
I think we kind of just suggested, okay, let's just use our path markers in the future when we play this because, it's a double-sided banner that
It's
clips in.
Yeah.
It's 4 or 5 inches tall.
This goes back to like our episode where we talked about Praga, where it had like 3D pieces that were unnecessary, right? Well, this makes a piece that stands up, and like if I'm sitting on a side of a table where I can't see, like I have to see certain spaces, it blocks out view for me. Like the last time we played this one, we did play with the standees, but we would knock it over and And was it Dan was try to pick it back up, but I kept pushing it over?
No, Dan, this is how we play.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I can't see.
And I think the production of that thing, I think it's pretty good.
Right.
Yeah, no,
Right.
it's
It's
nice.
great. It's really nice. But yeah, like you said, Tyson, you can't see like the recruit action. You're
Right.
like, I don't know if there's a genius there because the stupid banner's in the way, right? So yeah,
Exactly.
let's put a path marker there instead.
Which
It's just
I had to dig deep to come up with something I did not like about the production. And
if
But
that's
it
the
is one
worst
that we
thing, then
consistently hate. But like it's exactly.
If that's
Kevin.
the worst thing about the production, they're doing pretty good. So yeah.
Barring the minor blip of a complaint, this is a phenomenal production. So let's talk a little bit more about the gameplay, and let's talk about really why we want to talk about this game in the first place is how it plays. Tyler, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you like about Anachrony?
I like that for me, it buys into the theme that there's this sense of urgency, right? We're trying to save humanity. We're trying to, do as many things as we can. I feel like there's a sense of urgency that adds to that theme. And by that sense of urgency, I mean, you have a number of actions that you can take with your exosuits. Well, you're competing for those spaces each round with the other players, and you take one action at a time. There are a couple of caveats to that, but there are times where you've got a whole round planned out, but you have to do them in the exact right order based on what everybody else is doing to still be able to do all the actions that you want. So I feel like there's a sense of urgency there and risk, right? Which one do I try to do first and hope that Kevin or Tyson doesn't block? Like if there's resources that I need from the mining action, there's only one mining action or two mining action spots available still. What do I go for that, or do I go somewhere else and do, recruit, which I really need to do this round too? So,
or there's a building that I really want that fits in my strategy. Do I go there first?
Right. Yeah. Like those decisions, I feel like create this sense of urgency and risk of what do I do first?
There's that tension, right? Like
yes.
it's a tension that it's almost palpable, and that like you do have that anxiety surrounding, oh, where do I go? What do I do? I think that is an attribute of many worker placement games, but I think Anachrony does a better job than most worker placement games at giving you that urgency that you're talking about.
Yeah, well, and especially after the impact and spaces start drying up and being removed essentially from the game, there's less and less choices. I mean, it's
it even starts when you're powering up your exosuits.
Yep.
because that determines how many actions you can take on the capital city board. So it starts way early in the process, right? It's like, do I power up 3? Do I power up 4? It's like, do I do 5?
They're not all free, so there's costs.
There's costs associated with it. Yeah.
And then if you're watching what other people are doing with their boards and saying, oh, Kevin just powered up all 6 exosuits.
Oh, he's got big plans.
There are only so many available
He's only got
spaces
4
on
workers.
that
What is he
board.
doing?
He's trading with the nomads quite a bit.
Right. Like there's so many spaces or a finite amount of spaces on that board that because you have that variable amount of workers that you can place in a turn, somebody could place 2 workers on the main board or 6 workers. It becomes like this tension is increased even more and more. The great thing that I like about that, though, that I think that Anachrony has a great arc as far as like gameplay arc goes, is that as the game progresses and you get to that cataclysm phase and those spaces are becoming fewer and fewer on the capital board, your own personal boards, hopefully, if you've been playing it correctly, well, it may not even be correctly, depending on what your strategy is, your personal board may be able to give you a lot more worker spaces. So you can continue to have worker placement spots that even when stuff is taken on the capital board. But what I really like is those are only available to me.
Yep, those
and
are
so
exclusive to you. Yep.
So I'm going to likely play my own personal stuff after I've played whatever's on the capital board because I need to make sure that I'm maximizing my turn potential.
And hopefully as you're building those buildings, you're building synergies, you get an engine going based on your strategy. I say hopefully because that can be hard to do at times based on the buildings that come up, right?
Yep.
But it's cool when you get that engine going, right? You get a resource that then you can use immediately on another spot, that type of thing. It's really interesting, really cool, I think. Another thing I like is, we've talked about how it's a worker placement game. The workers are different, right? And they do different things and they specialize in different things. And I think that's just awesome. Yeah. The engineers, if you take an engineer and you mine with that engineer, you get that guy back awake instead of asleep. It's kind of cool. If you build with that engineer, you get a titanium discount. If you can only research if you use a scientist. And there's little thematic ties there, but the fact that they specialize in different things is cool, right? It kind of makes an interesting decision on who you're going to recruit.
I totally agree. And I love that about the game is those different workers and what they can do, right? Because they do have a different feel to them. And it's not just like this wooden meeple, as many worker placement games are, is identical to this wooden meeple. There is a difference. There is a feel. And because they have their own jobs, they have their own personalities. And there are potentials in this game where you could potentially kill a worker, like by taking out it, like sacrificing a worker for water, and it adds a personality. And there's actually a degree of attachment that I may have more formed with this worker than something else. But really what I think is great about those workers is they have two states, right? You have an awake worker or you have a tired sleeping worker. And I love that because it adds more dynamics in, like, you can never use a sleeping worker. Like, you cannot go and send that sleeping worker. You have to get that worker awake. And you can either get that worker awake nicely by just having an administrator usually.
You give them water.
Pleasantly refresh them.
Oh, that's so funny. That's awesome.
Or you can whip them awake essentially and get them going and force them awake, which
then
so
you
cool.
take a morale hit.
Yeah, you're
Correct.
losing morale and
there's
morale
a consequence to that. But also it may be necessary because in order to go for continuing on that tension from earlier, Tyler, to that capital board, if you need specific workers to do specific things, like if you want the discount from building with an engineer and you don't have any engineers awake, sometimes you may want to force them awake so that you can do that action because it acts as a free action instead of a main action.
Yep.
I always feel like such a jerk when I wake them up the main way, though.
Yeah. I also like about the workers too. Each round, new workers come out and it's random. It's not always just, one of each. Those workers become available from the supply at the beginning of the round, and then that's what's available to you for the most part. Can't really go beyond that. There are a couple of caveats with special powers and different buildings, I think. But
it's also an interesting choice because you get a bonus when you take one of those workers. You could really need a power core to power up an exosuit. And you're like, oh, well, man, okay, do I take an engineer and then get a power core? But I kind of need a scientist. Do I take the scientist? It adds another layer of decision-making to that process.
Which I had a really crappy experience with this. So it was a game we played like 6 or 7 months ago, and it was the only bad play of Anachrony that I've had. I realized at the end of the game, for every worker that I hired, I never took the bonus reward.
Oh, geez.
And
that'll set you back a little bit.
It just killed my game. Yeah. And I was still fairly new to the game anyway, but that I was like, oh, this is frustrating. Like,
that absolutely would kill your game. So touching on what you were just saying though, Tyler, I think that absolutely would kill your game because of how tight resources are in this game. Very tight. That's something that I really enjoy is that I have to be deliberate. I can't just plan for this turn in this game. I have to be thinking about the next turn. And in fact, with those rounds, I have to plan, like you said earlier, Kevin, I have to plan which exosuits I want to play out, how many I want to do out so that I know where I'm going. But also I have to do the warp tiles, right? Like, and I have to play out this timeline, which has this time travel. And I'm a sucker for time travel in movies, books, board games. I love time travel. And I think that this does it so well. Effectively, though, this is just a loan mechanic, right? Like if this were skinned as a banking style game, this would be a loan mechanic. But because they did it as a time travel thing, you can lend yourself resources from the future. And that could be critical because you may need just that one resource to be able to do the exact thing you need to do in that round. But you could potentially not pay it off, and now you have a consequence.
Another thing I like about the game is that it kind of guides you in a path. There's so much to do in this game. It can be a little overwhelming, especially if you've only played it one or two times. But you have an evacuation criteria, and it can be worth a lot of points, right? But it's something you need to accomplish in order to evacuate out of the capital city after the asteroid impacts. And the evacuation criteria could be a certain number of buildings that you have on your board, or I forget what the other ones are, but there's certain things that you need to meet. And then there's a bonus for that below that says, if you meet this criteria, however many times you meet that, you get additional points, right? So it kind of, like I said, guides you towards a strategy. You don't have to evacuate. You don't have to do that. It's probably a bad idea if you don't, because it's worth a lot of points. But it kind of gives you a little bit of a focus, a little direction to go.
Gives you a path.
It gives you a path. There you go.
Path of harmony? Path of salvation? Is that what you're talking about?
Dominance, whatever. But I think that's really helpful in the game, and it's something that I like.
I like that a lot too, and so the last couple of games we've played, I've focused on that path, that evacuation condition a lot, and I've scored in both of the last two games. I got like 23 and 26 points out of that, or something like that. Which is something that felt so awesome and felt so good. But I know that that's a potential situation in which some of us may have stuff we dislike about that. So let's merge into some of the things we may not like with that, starting with
this is small, and this is one of those ones where I'm not sure how I feel. Those were both incredible games as far as the points that you picked up from bonus scoring. And to your credit, you killed it. And which path is that?
So one of them was the path of dominance, and then the other one was the
I thought it was the same one.
Path of salvation. I had two separate paths.
I feel like these factions or paths are very asymmetric, and some of them are handcuffed a little more than others. But I also feel like it's a little bit easier to score some of the bonus points with the ones that are handcuffed a little bit, right? So I don't know how I feel about the bonus points completely. I almost feel like there should be a cap, like there is in a number of games when you have scoring conditions at the end of the game, like, hey, you can score 3 points for this, up to 12 points, right? There was one that I've played with, I think it was Path of Harmony, where it was the number of geniuses that you had and something else. And like 5 geniuses came out from the supply during the whole game. And I can't do this.
And you may not even have the first player token to be able to grab them or whatever.
Geniuses are the most sought after because they're wild. So your other people are going to be getting those too.
I'm not sure that it's really a negative. I've wondered, would this be better if some of the bonus points were capped a little bit more?
But if you see that, then maybe, okay, this isn't going to be completely my focus, right? You can focus on other ways to get victory points to maybe compensate for that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That game we played with Dan, you and I, Tyson, the other night, and I don't know how many points you scored, but I had no idea. Like, I wasn't paying attention to what you were doing. And all of a sudden you bust out, you evacuate and you scored like
23 points.
Yeah. And it was like, I can't, my faction does not even at my best, if I would have played optimally, I did not have that many points possible to me from bonus points in this.
And I think, so that leads into one of the things that I have concern with, maybe, or it's not really like I don't dislike it, but it in this style of game, in this weight of a game, you're going to always have the potential of, if you have an experienced player playing with people who don't first time or don't have as much familiarity with the game. I think there's an easy perception in this game where you could think things are imbalanced when they may not actually be imbalanced, but it is that asymmetry of like, you have to play to your faction's strength, but you may not understand what that is. Like the path of dominance, for example, they don't earn water when you're from mechs that aren't placed on your board, because normally if you don't fill up all your mechs, you gain water, right? But the path of dominance doesn't get any water, so it looks like it's extremely hard to be able to get water for that faction. So unless you know that, okay, well, I can't get water, here's how I have to go find the alternative methods, you don't truly feel like you have a competitive edge with people who know how to play the game as well. And so I think there's some potential concern with that.
I mean, like I said earlier, I think some of the easier bonus scoring factions also are a little more handcuffed during the game. And I think in the end, it probably all balances out. And this being Mindclash, I'm sure that hundreds and hundreds of playtesting hours went into the balancing of the factions and the asymmetrical benefits and hindrances, and bonus points available. On the surface, it does feel a little bit like, hey, I mean, like I said, the one game, hardly any geniuses came out. How am I can't score any bonus points.
Right.
They get picked up right away, and there's not that many available to begin with. I should have played the other side of this path.
Yeah. One other small gripe I have about the base game, and it's around the breakthroughs. So the breakthroughs, they're the only reason, you get bonus points at the end of the game for breakthroughs.
They're kind of weak.
And you get bonus points for sets of breakthroughs. Not a lot of points. I feel like maybe you should get a little bit more, but and then you use them for super projects. They feel a little weak, like you said, Tyler, in the base game. It's probably the least interesting part for me in the base game. And thematically, I don't really. You're breakthroughing like circles and triangles and squares
with symbols on them.
I think thematically that maybe breaks down a little bit, unless I'm missing something completely. I don't know, but that's just not really interesting there. Where it gets better though is in the expansions, and we haven't touched on the expansions a whole lot, but the expansions make those breakthroughs a little bit more useful. We played through Future Imperfect, and there's the Quantum Loops expansion where you use those breakthroughs to pay back the timeline, right?
Yep.
Also, I think Pioneers of the New Earth, you're using those breakthroughs for that expansion as well. So I think it addresses some of those concerns in the expansion. But if you're just looking at the base game, I think those breakthroughs are not quite.
I would agree.
I don't know, not quite where they should be in my mind.
They're not the strength of the game, right? They feel like, to me, if you've played Tricarion from Mindclash games, Tricarion has that dice mechanic that the breakthroughs do of you can set one dice and then roll the other one. And I think in Tricarion, it's a little bit more fleshed out, and it feels better in that. But in Anachrony, until we played with the Quantum Loop expansion, I almost never did a breakthrough. Like most games of the base game that I've played, I almost entirely ignore that scientific research unless they're like, because
you need them for the super project.
But I've built in like 15, 20 games. I've built like 4 or 5 maybe super projects in the entire time of the base game that I've played. And I still feel very competitive. I think that the super projects themselves have a competitive, like you can play with that and win by focusing on super projects. But like I've never wanted to, partially because of that thematic element to it, that it just doesn't feel like the rest of the game to me. Like the breakthroughs, I don't really understand what I'm doing with it, and it's not the most interesting action to take, and like it doesn't excite me to do it.
It's kind of like the action you take when all the other actions are filled up, right?
Yeah, it is.
You're not going to go there
unless you
first.
really have your heart set on a super
specific
project.
super project. Yeah. So for me, like that's not my favorite. The other thing that I wanted to mention as far as complaints, things I dislike about the game, is I've taught this game a lot. And I think that this game, there's a lot to teach in this game. So it's not terribly hard to teach. I don't think it's hard to understand. The hard part about teaching this game, though, is the cataclysm. So in the middle of the game, essentially, well, potentially the middle, could be closer to the end because of the fact that the length of the game can be variable on the amount of rounds. And so because of that, the cataclysm changes things up. But it's so hard from a teaching perspective, I think, to teach all of the game and then say, okay, 4 rounds later, the cataclysm is going to occur, and this is what's going to happen. And I can give a basic gist of what it is, which is usually what I do. And then I say, when we get to that, I'll tell you exactly how this kind of breaks down, because there's already so much to learn and process about the game. When I teach the cataclysm up front, people are just like, wait, let's just get into the game and play it. And so I really don't like it because I've had a number of complaints from people who are like, oh, I didn't understand the cataclysm. If I had understood the cataclysm better, I would have planned for it and realized that the game ends maybe 6 rounds, 7 rounds, whatever it is. And that
you have to let them know about the evacuation and that kind of stuff.
Right, which I do, but yeah.
But it is
maybe
difficult,
it almost pays off just to explain that after the first round of play. I don't know. Maybe that's the sweet spot for, hey, now that we have a round under your belt, let's talk about, and you still have plenty of time to prepare for it. Let's talk about the impact and
I still think invariably you're going to get, because until you understand what that is going to be like and play with that, you're going to get that complaint, because I've had that complaint multiple times from multiple people.
Say, you know what? If you're going to complain about that, maybe you should have learned the game. And
you read the dang rules.
Yeah, it's a 40-page rule book.
I know. There's just a lot to this game, so it's
awesome though.
Oh, it is
so good. I have a couple of negative things, and one of them came up while you were talking. This is just me. This came up when we talked about Ankh. When I'm having fun playing a game and there is the potential to end the game early, as in you don't play all the available rounds by triggering the end game, I just don't like that. And even if it means I know I could secure the win, like I'm having fun playing this game. If I had the choice of triggering the end game a round early and winning, or choosing not to trigger the end and we play the final round, I'll do that. I don't like when games end when I'm having fun playing them spontaneously. And it's not super spontaneously, like you can see it coming when it's about to happen, but I hate that. I just feels like my experience got cut short, even if it meant that I would win the game. I don't care about that so much.
I think that's the nicest negative I've ever heard about a game. Right? I love the game so much I want to keep playing it.
Yeah, no, it is. But,
I think you're wrong.
I know we've talked about it. Like it's the same thing, and we talked about this back in episode 1 with Ankh. Like the game ends when someone gets to the top of the devotion track, but I'm having fun, and there's 6 more battles to hash out. Like this is awesome. Why do we have to stop right now?
I totally understand how the perspective and where you're coming from, because you want a physical, like the game tells you it ends at this specific time, instead of some player who can potentially control that. Because like I like that though, because now I can control that and say, oh, I can count out the spaces. I can see where it's going to end. And if I do this,
I understand.
I love
the strategy of it.
The strategic decision that can be made in the game.
I understand the strategy of it. I enjoy playing the game so much.
You just want to play it more.
Yeah. It's this Acquire, one of my favorite games. you can end the game. There are end game conditions that you can end it when there's still opportunity to make money and keep playing the game.
Well, and perhaps that's a good example because in Acquire specifically, like, and maybe that gives me even better perspective because in Acquire specifically, you can get somebody who's out of the game, not like they kind of ruin their play and they're like, well, what's my best move?
Oh, I'm just going to
end the game, right?
Yes.
So you can get that, and you can do that too in Anachrony. But I think like also like Railways of the World, we just reviewed that one in our last feature review. It also has a variable end game trigger.
It is, but you at least get one more full round out of it.
But it's still ending the game sooner than it could be ended.
Which is a decision, right? And it's a decision that I enjoy.
But Railways doesn't have a fixed ending if you make it to a certain point. It's
right.
always triggered by the gameplay. Yep. Like I said, I understand the strategy. Maybe, if there was bragging rights involved and I knew I was going to win, I would choose to end it. But honestly, most of the time, like, okay, if I end this, now we have enough time to play a filler game. Yay. Or I can get a whole nother full awesome round of this amazing game in. I'm not going to choose that.
I think it's an exciting decision, right? Because if you think you have enough to win, and you can trigger the end game.
You're rolling the dice.
You're rolling the dice. You're like, okay, I'm going to go for it. Right?
I get it.
I'm going to end the game now, and then we're going to see how it plays out. I think that's an exciting decision.
And that scenario specifically is one of my favorite ways to trigger that end game, because typically in that situation, what is happening is there is somebody who you can see they have an engine going and that they're going to do something to gain a lot of points. And if I don't do this now,
then you thwart them.
Then I can stop the potential engine. I may not win because I think I've got enough points, but I'm not sure. But I'm going to do this because it ensures that they can't get 30 more points or whatever it may be.
I agree and I understand all of that.
But you just want to play the game.
I want to play the game. I don't want to go play, Llama or Love Letter after this if we still have enough time. I'd rather play a full nother round.
Well, maybe you'd end it early for Monster Crunch though.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, if that was available, sure.
I'll just put that on the table.
Battle game. Yeah. Amazing. Yep.
That'll be my end game situation. If I'm going to end the game early,
riding the high of nostalgia, playing Monster Crunch,
Frankenberry, Booberry,
Count Chocula. If I love a game as much as I do Anachrony, I don't want it to end early. And some of the expansions change that a little bit, and which is great. And so
you could essentially play the game however you would like.
Right, because there's
with
so
the
many
expansions that they have.
Which and I don't mean to belabor it, but for me, even so
you are belaboring it though.
I know, but I
get ready for belaboring.
For me, even if I'm losing, it comes back to the tension we talked about earlier, right? I love the tension that Anachrony can create, and there is a tension that exists at that end game as well, that if I'm not the one who ends it, I don't want it to end, but somebody could end it. So what decisions am I making if somebody else is ending it, or potentially what do I have to get done? And I like those decisions.
I generally have a lot of suits in the last round, and I try to wait until I can ensure that it'll be one more round before I take some of the actions that I need. And I just love the game and I don't want it to end, even if it means I would have won. So that's,
fair
not optimal play per se, but it is what it is.
But it's a testament to the game that it is fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And though, I feel like every negative thing that we've said, especially the ones I've said, are really pretty minimal.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had to think hard about some of those, and really they don't deter me from wanting to play this game at all. I want to go play it right now.
Agreed. Let's get it set up.
Yeah.
Hey, we got the Infinity Box. It's a quick setup.
Yeah.
So overall, yes, I think that this game has a lot to like. And you're right, Tyler. I think the complaints that we have about this game are minimal. But they're good to be aware of if you're considering and haven't played this game before. So let's go ahead and wrap it up, though. Let's go ahead and give it our rating. We rate games on a scale of 1 to 5, and if you truly hate the game, you can give it a 0. I would be shocked if anybody did that with this game. But to start us off, Kevin, why don't you tell us your final thoughts on this game?
So there's a lot. I mean, we've talked about a lot about this game already. There's a lot to love about Anachrony. From the production, we talked about the exosuits, actually putting the workers in the exosuits, how thematic the game is. I think it has a lot of thematic ties. The time travel mechanic, which, like you mentioned, Tyson, is essentially a loan, but it's an awesome loan, right? It's just the way that they do it and the way that they pull it off it just feels good, right? You're borrowing from the future and then you're paying back. If you don't do that, you can get a paradox and then you can get an anomaly. And then to get rid of the anomaly, you're killing your people. It's a lot of cool concepts. I love the worker placement aspect. I love the variability. We talked a little bit about expansions. I love how there's just little modules you can put in to change it. There's big modules that make big changes, which is really cool and really interesting. I feel like I've only scratched the surface of the expansions, and I'm just super excited to dig deeper into those.
And we've played a fair amount of the expansions.
And we have, yeah, for sure. So a lot to love. I have very minimal complaints. And even those complaints are fixed with some of the expansion content. So really, I have no complaints because I don't think that I really want to play just the base game, right? There's so much, unless I'm playing with somebody new, there's so much content that I would just like to throw in there and experiment and play with. So I love Anachrony. Bold statement coming. I think this could be my new number one game of all time. So with that said, it's no surprise that I rate this one a 5, possibly a 6, but our scale doesn't go there.
You broke the scale.
I broke the scale. It's absolutely a 5 for me.
So I'll go ahead and go next with my thoughts. They echo a lot of what you've just said, Kevin. I think that there's a lot of things to really like about this game. The one thing I do want to emphasize, though, is that those expansions, right? When you play this game as the base game, I do think that after a certain period of time, it can get stale if you're only playing the base game. So I have owned the game since 2017. I've played the game a lot. I didn't play almost any of the expansion content until the last year and a half or so. And there were times where if somebody suggests, let's play Anachrony, I started to get to the point where I was like, is that really what I want to play? Because it was just the base game. I love the game. Don't get me wrong. Everything we've talked about, I love. You can tell that I love this game. But I do think that there is a point at which if you don't play with the expansion content, that the game itself could potentially get stale. And if you had asked me before we started playing this with the expansion content, I would have probably rated it at a 4 at that point in time. But as soon as we started playing again with expansion content and exploring it and seeing it, it fixes these minor complaints that we have. And it really, I think, enhances the experience. And every expansion that I've played with up to this point has been a significant improvement. Like it really focuses on something that exists in the base game and enhances it in a way that is just spectacular. So for everything that is worth, like I said, I would have potentially rated it as a 4 as base game alone after so many plays. But ultimately, like, I can't do that because of the expansiveness of this game, how fantastic the theme has been integrated. It's a 5.
Awesome. Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, we've been talking for 45 minutes or an hour about Anachrony, and I feel like we barely scratched the surface, especially when you get into all of the expansion content. And you both, alluded to that a little bit. And the other day, well, it was on President's Day, we played all of the Future Imperfect modules added into the game. And I can't remember the last time that I had that much fun playing a game. I mean, we played, it took us 3.5, 4 hours. It was a long 4-player game. I loved every second of it. It felt like it was an hour and 45 minutes. And something so cool is like one of the modules, it lets you send back capital actions back in time. Not just, whereas the base game, it's resources and
mech suits or exosuits,
or
people
or workers, which you have to send with water, which is
because they get thirsty.
Yeah, during time travel, which is awesome. Excuse me, but you being able to send back actions, like I thought that was such a cool, simple module. I don't know. There is just. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface. There's so much more still to explore and experience. And for me, this game, production-wise, is near perfect, and gameplay-wise is near perfect. I'm not ready to say it's my number one now, but it's definitely up there in the top 5 easily. And I can't wait to play this game more. It's a 5 for me. When we talk about it, maybe again in a year when we review it, whatever, it's still going to be a 5. Like, this game is awesome. It's a masterpiece, really, in my opinion. So,
and you can't forget that there's an app that goes along with this.
We didn't bring up the app. Yeah. Which is a necessity at this point whenever you play. Right.
Yeah. It's just pure hilarity, right? Like it's
so a little background on the app. Yeah. So I think it was during the Kickstarter, right? The designers all made sound effects for all the different actions in the game. So you can go through, and as you're taking the actions, you select a designer, and if you're killing somebody, for example, you click on the button, and
you're waking them up rudely.
Yeah, you're waking up rudely, or you're building something, and
getting in an exosuit, whatever you can think of. There's a sound effect for it.
Even if you win the game, there is a victory one, and oh my gosh, it's
just cool. I mean, just a nice touch and bonus, completely unnecessary, but just adds to the experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, we love Anachrony, and it's no surprise with the quality of games that Mindclash Games put out. This is a game that if you haven't played, you need to play.
So bring on Voidfall, right?
Yeah,
I'm excited for that one.
Did you back that one too?
I did.
We're not supposed to double up anymore.
That was before we made that roll.
Oh, okay.
And I really want to see it on my shelf, so I don't care.
Well, even before that, I've got Perseverance coming very soon.
That's another one. You're the only one that backed that one, though, so yeah.
I'm excited for that one, so yep. This has been a long episode, right? But there was one thing that we wanted to mention that we're super excited about, and that is Brandon Sanderson's Kickstarter and the fact that he, out of the blue, with typical
Sanderson style,
announced, hey, oh, by the way, took the time to write five other books.
Was it 5? It was 5 books?
It's 5. 4 of them. I think he said one of them will be a
later project, like a later publication, maybe a graphic novel.
Yeah,
like
a graphic novel. That's but right. 4 books that are coming out next year as part of this Kickstarter, along with a bunch of other, fan content related to his books and materials, and I don't know.
We've talked about Sanderson before in the podcast, just briefly. And for those who may not know, Brandon Sanderson is at least for me, he's my favorite author. I think that he's my favorite. Tyler's as well.
My wife's favorite. My son's favorite. Like,
he's fantastic. Everything he does. I know Kevin likes him.
I like him, and I've read 4 of the Stormlight Archive books, and his world building is amazing.
Phenomenal, right?
I've started Mistborn, I think, 3 times now and haven't quite gotten through it, but which Tyson,
We need to have a
who
discussion
can't see him, which
on-
is everybody. He's shaking his head.
We need
in
to have
disbelief.
discussion at some point on which one's better. We all know it's Stormlight, but
We could have a discussion about this indeed.
This is for another episode.
But we love Sanderson and generally, and I think that one of the things that I loved seeing about this is that it's now the most funded Kickstarter project of all time,
which is amazing.
and has over 100,000 backers. At this point that we're looking at it, it's over 110,000
it's
backers.
114, and he's $26.66 million.
We're obviously not the only Sanderson fans out there.
No, we're not. And if you like theme, like, I mean, we just talked about Anachrony and the theme that's in that, it's great. If you like world building and theme and things like that, phenomenal. I am so happy for Brandon Sanderson and what he's going to bring from this project. I went all in, and I don't know whether or not I'm going to end up regretting that. I doubt it very much, but I'm excited.
I'm following the rule that we all shouldn't back a Kickstarter. So
Well, we've got at least 3 in the group that did. So
Yeah.
because I know Ben did too.
Right.
I they did the trial, I think, of Way of Kings Leatherbound as a Kickstarter, and I think they pulled that off, and it was a huge success. And then I got to think that contributed to the decision to do this.
Yeah.
And I think he, as well as his team, deserve every penny that they earn from this, because
Totally agree.
he is phenomenal. He is
one
amazing.
of the hardest working author out there.
The rate at which he puts out new works and the
Multiple novels a year.
the quality and the content, the unique characters, and
Yeah.
I think
it's just
I think it's funny. I watched his video and he's like, I laughed when he said, everybody handles stress different, right? Yeah, you're kidding. You're not kidding, right? Like, he wrote 4 books because he was stressed during the pandemic.
Yeah,
I didn't
now
create
feel like
4
a
more podcasts.
chump for playing Halo last night. When I
know.
was stressed.
I played a lot of Halo, which I had a good time, but he was a little more productive than I was, I think, during the pandemic. So I got a chuckle out of that.
So I think ultimately we're all super excited for Brandon Sanderson and this Kickstarter and what it means for him as an author, for us as fans, and for the publishing industry of or books in general.
And I also hope that this means that we will start seeing some of his content on the big screen
Or small screen. In
Either
some ways I prefer small.
And I think that he'll do a good job of retaining creative control whenever that eventually happens to a certain extent.
Some of that he's helped out with Wheel of Time series, right?
Yeah. So I couldn't be more excited about it, both personally and for him and his team. It's awesome.
Well, I think that about wraps us up for this episode. We've talked about a lot of things, but we, of course, want to invite you to check us out in other locations. We are on Instagram. We post a lot of photos of the games that we're playing, both the games that we're talking about here on the podcast and games that we may not always mention. In addition to that, be sure to check out our Board Game Geek blog out, because there we'll go into more depth. Check out the Aeon's End blog post that Kevin posted recently for more in-depth thoughts on his experience with that game, as well as everything else.
I'm writing about my futile efforts to reclaim my shelf of shame.
This is true.
You're making some progress, right?
It's slow, but we're getting there.
Hey,
Depends on
the
what your
year is
definition
young.
of progress is, because what was your net amount on this last one?
It was I removed 4 overall.
Okay, so you're going in the right direction.
I'm going in the right direction.
How many games have you added, though? No? None?
This year, 2.
I added 2, but those were included in the net from last month, I think.
Got it.
So,
Okay.
So we've got more content. Board Game Geek blog on Instagram. Be sure to check out our Board Game Geek Guild 3947. And of course, come back next time and listen to us. We'll be happy to talk more about board games.
thank you for listening.
Thanks.
See ya.
Have a good day.
Tot ziens.
Bye.
That's how it should start. Oh, are we going with
Arnak.
okay. Anachrony is I I hope you're recording.
I am.
Okay, good.
All right. Well, I think that sums. All right. All right. Well, shut up.
I think Tyler's just having seizures over here.
I'll get my squeaks out right now.
That's going in the
Oh, you could.
outtakes. I'll get my squeaks out right now.
Chair.
All right. Get your squeaks out, Tyson.
Rude. That type of
I love that. I think that has.
Sorry.
Water break.
Yeah.
Yeah, agree. Because mine
I
is
was
getting
about coughing
scratchy
the whole
too.
time I was talking, so. Well, you're the milkman.